All right. Good afternoon, DevOps. How are you all doing? Good. Whoa, a few people in the front, in the back. You all doing fine? At least I can somewhat see the thumbs up, but the lights are very bright. So if I ask you later in the session to raise your hands, raise them really high, because then at least maybe I can see them a little bit. So hi everyone. I'm Tom. I am one of the organizers of the Belgian Java User Group. If you like the Belgian Java User Group logo, I actually have some stickers for you after the session. Please stay put. And today I wanted to talk to you about something, because while I'm organizing the Belgian Java User Group, I actually spent more than half of my career in the Netherlands. The very first year I got hired as a consultant, I had the opportunity to live in Amsterdam for a year. And that was great because the consultancy company paid for everything, and I could not live at home with my parents anymore, which was a great deal. I could save a lot of money. But one of the things they told me was, please don't change. Please don't become Dutch. And I'm a bit ashamed to admit, but after a year, I had successfully failed in that mission, and I had become somewhat of a Dutch person. I still, by accident, sometimes say doei or doeg, which for Flemish people is like, ugh, cringe, cringe. So this is a talk about change, and I actually wanted to start in that very first year when I worked in the Netherlands. Because in that year, I worked on a team with a senior developer. Senior in two ways. One, super experienced, super knowledgeable, very good team lead, so senior. But also senior in the sense, gray hairs, he was like 1 year away from retirement, literally. He was counting down the rest of his days. His career days, sorry, just to be very specific. And one day, I just came out of school because this was my first project, and one day I had sent in a pull request, and I could see the moment he saw my pull request. Because he was sitting, we were still in the office that day. He was sitting right next to me, and he suddenly does like this, stretches back. I could literally hear him go, And then I heard him say words that are etched in my mind. You damn kids with your code completion, you don't even need to know how to code anymore. And I was like, what? I mean, isn't this normal code completion? Did I just go to school and learn all the wrong things? I thought I could just type a dot and it will help me out. So my reaction back then, because I was younger, was I basically told him, yeah, don't act ridiculous, go with the times, man. Just adapt, just change, just accept this, let go of your neo-vim, whatever thing you're using, your superior human being, just adapt and join the code completion era. So I was actually kind of denigrating him a little bit, but I also thought, Tom, I hope you never become this resistant to change. I hope you don't become this arrogant and not keep up with the times anymore. So that was 11 years ago. So now I'm much older and wiser. And what I was doing for a couple of years, I was doing code reviews in a school. So these were the second-year students, and I'd been doing these code reviews for like 7 years. So every year I could see small changes, and a couple of years ago was the first year I really saw the students have discovered LLMs now. Because it really changed what I saw in those code reviews. And I have a few observations that I'm curious what you think will be the answer to these. What do you think happened to the sheer amount of code compared to previous years? Did it go up or down? So maybe people that think the sheer amount of code went up. Who thinks the sheer amount of code went down? Almost down, yeah. So the sheer amount of code went up because ChatGPT and the way students often work with it is basically a code vomiting machine. And if you give people a code vomiting machine, they will use it to vomit out more code. The general quality of the code. So these are second-year students. What do you think happened to the general quality of the code? Do you think it went up or down? So up. Who thinks the quality went down? See, much more division. But these are second-year students, and compared to previous second-year students, the general quality actually kind of went up, because these are second-year students. They had just learned Spring like a week or two ago. So compared to the previous years, the quality went up. So that was sort of kind of logical. So what happened to the comprehension of the code? Because not only did we do the code reviews and we send them like this long list of this is our feedback, we also went and talked to these teams and tested them like, ooh, this is a construct I don't expect second-year students to know. So we questioned them, do they actually understand the code? What do you think happened there? Who thinks they understood more of the code? Who thinks they understood less of the code? So a lot of people say less. So it depends. And now, if I can give you some golden advice, whenever someone says it depends, your initial reaction should be a question, namely? On what? Thank you. So it depends on how the students were using these LLMs. You had the students that were really using them as a tutor, meaning every time they saw an annotation or anything they didn't understand from the code, they would ask the LLM, what does this mean? And the students that did that rigorously understood way more of the code base than I had expected and I've ever seen before in my years that I was doing these code reviews. The other part of the students were the typical students that would have copy-pasted from Stack Overflow before. But with LLMs, you don't even need to write a functional, grammatical correct sentence to ask a question. And Stack Overflow will sort of throw away your questions if you don't ask a good question. So it was sort of enabling these students to not even understand things at all, and they were just typing in stuff and then disregarding it. So last observation was the complexity. What do you think happened to the complexity of the code? The solution they finally made, how complex was it? Did it go up or down? So up. Who thinks down? So a few people think down. Well, I introduced a separate emoji for this one because it went through the roof. And I'll give you a few examples. So these students had just learned Spring. And they were doing some premature performance optimization. So they asked the LLM, how do I build a performant web service? What do you think it answered? Reactive programming with Webflux. Now, I hear a few people laughing, but this is not something you teach students normally if they just learned about Spring. I think if there's any kind of proof that LLMs are not always with us, but sometimes against us, it's this. You don't need reactive programming to, well, first of all, don't do premature performance optimization, but second of all, reactive programming with Webflux. So these students got totally off the track because this was just too complex. The other one was also interesting. So they had to build a service, but they had an external dependency, and they were logically thinking, you know, we do the same call a couple of times, maybe we should cache it. So how do you cache something in Spring? Anyone? How do you cache something in Spring? And then everything in Spring is an annotation, right? And then some magic happens. So add cacheable. You add cacheable on a method, and it basically caches it for you. So that was the simple solution. But that's not what the LLM said. They said, make something custom. And it was absolutely amazing. So they call the backend. They take the data that comes from the backend. They put it into Redis, a Redis cache, so a new element in the architecture. And then they thought, yeah, but if it's in the cache, then I can just make the Redis API public, and then I can call it from the UI. And then it became just a tangled mess of dependencies. But it wasn't only these sort of remarks that I felt. I learned something new during those code reviews. I learned a new word. A word I had never seen in my entire career while coding. Verzoeklichaam. 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 Never in my life have I heard of verzoeklichaam. And I saw it in the comments of this code base. Now, I thought, I don't know this word. I'm going to look it up. You know what the answers were? Very interesting. Let me show you. So one of my friends said, I'll translate it in English, verzoeklichaam, it's the shape you want to be in for the summer. Very weird thing to see in your code base. The other one is even more disturbing. It is, would you like to donate your body to science? And I was like, what is this thing doing in this code base? And then, of course, it's very obvious. Request body. Now, it's somewhat weird because we did these conversations with them, right, to test their comprehension. They were using the word verzoekslichaam when talking to me. Dear Tom, how do I add this verzoekslichaam to this request? It's changing our language. And with all those things combined, all the extra complexity, the comprehension, the new words that I learned, there was one thing that came in my mind. Those damn kids with their damn LLMs, they don't even need to know how to code anymore. And the second it crossed my mind, I realized, oh no. Oh no. I am the old guy now. I am the change-resistant person that can't deal with this new world, apparently. So this little incident, let's call it, took me on a path on learning about dealing with change. Why was I having such a hard time with change? So I read a bunch of books, and I'm going to share you some insights on how to deal with change. Very broadly, not that technical, but also just in life. So that's what we're going to do today. So despite reading a lot of self-help books, I was thinking, how can I structure this story in a way that's sort of fun? And I figured out, in the public domain, there's this little story called The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. And since it's in the public domain, it means there's no copyright on it. So that means I can use it in my presentation. And during the story of The Wizard of Oz, you might know it from things that are still under copyright, Dorothy meets 3 companions. And these 3 companions show exactly what we need to deal with any kind of change. And that's what we're going to talk to today. Now, I have some good news. The book is public domain, but the songs are not, so this will not become a musical. If my colleagues ever ask me to do karaoke, I hope they bring earplugs and hopefully don't push me to do that. So we're going through the story of the Wizard of Oz. And the first companion is the Tin Woodsman. So you might have seen this character somewhere. It's basically a person fully made of tin, and he has a very weird history. Meaning, in the book, he used to be a fully human person, but he got cursed, and whenever he would try to cut down a tree, he would accidentally slip and cut something from his body, until eventually he had to replace himself fully into a tin man. And the Tin Man really has one objective in the story. He wants to have a heart, because he feels that he can't show compassion or show feelings anymore. And I think that's something that, with the changes of AI that came, was something that I saw all around us as well. Don't know if anyone saw this blog post at some point. So this was very early when AI came out and Midjourney, when Gen AI was booming. Basically, it's someone crying that he lost everything that made him love his job, because now these LLM things, these Gen AI things, can do his job for him. He was really sad and depressed, and if you find this blog post again, it's super sad. So one of the feelings we had was very sad, and like, please don't do this, and please stop. Remember this? I don't know if you've ever seen this, but a couple of years ago, when ChatGPT was launching, people were petitioning, please stop this. Now we're a bit further in the future. We all know that this train hasn't stopped. But we did have the feeling of, please stop this, put it back into the box. And I host a Belgian Java user group. I had a lot of people in our community that had feelings, both positive and negative, about the AI wave. And that's where I want to start today. And it's very weird to talk about feelings at a tech conference, but I feel that we have to, because it is normal to have feelings about what these things do to us. I don't know how you felt the first time that you saw an LLM do something that you thought only you could do. Like, oh, damn, this thing can do that now? And it didn't help that in some cases, people were very hyped about it. And they were saying things like, yeah, if you don't adapt, if you don't change and don't adapt these tools, you're never going to make it. Like it's some kind of crypto scam thing. Someone that you all know, but I'm not going to name his name, said, adapt or die. Basically telling developers, if you don't adapt, you will die. You will be left behind and you will suffer forever. And I was like, are we surprised that some people are hesitant and resistant to change if that's the messaging? So it is normal to feel something when these big changes happen. I was like this. I was like a good period of my career where I was just somewhat depressed every time I saw an LLM do something that I thought, wow, how? But then I thought, I had a burnout before, so I kind of can recognize some of the feelings and have to deal with this. And one of the first things they teach you when you have a burnout is to get insight in what is this process of burnout. And in this case, why is this change difficult? Why do I have problems with this change, but maybe not some other changes? And, well, in some cases, it really depends just on the speed of change. This is highly uncomfortable. If it's involuntary, this is highly uncomfortable. To suddenly see everything flash by, and sometimes change can feel like that, like a sort of a roller coaster. We don't typically like fast, unexpected change. We like change that sort of comes slowly, like a slow sunrise that comes into the sky. That's more like the change we like. We don't like things to go fast. Now, the weird thing with LLMs was, if you didn't pay attention, one day you typed something and, oh, now these things can do something I thought they couldn't. While in reality, it was actually slowly rising. But it's not just about the rate of change, not how fast it goes. There's something much more fundamental, and for that we have to actually go to another fairy tale. Does anyone recognize where this one comes from? Yeah, Alice in Wonderland. And Alice is talking to the caterpillar, and basically the question is, well, does anyone know what question the caterpillar asks over and over? Who are you? And that's actually a much more fundamental question to ask when you're having some trouble with dealing with change. Let me give you a concrete example for AI now. So who considers themselves a software engineer or developer? So there's a few ways that that actually translates to, because that's kind of a shortcut for one of the following sentences. Do you code for a living? Do you solve business problems using code? Or are you a coder? And depending how you answer this question, you will have had probably more or less troubles with AI coming into existence. It's just how you see yourself. Now, I saw myself as I am a coder. I had made it a big part of my identity. I wear conference t-shirts all the time. I'm big Java, always when I'm online. So this is a very big part of my identity, and suddenly I saw something that threatened that identity. So how you see yourself is very important in this story. Now, I work for a company that does AI planning optimization. So we can optimize and create schedules that human planners sometimes take hours, maybe sometimes even days to make. Do you think that we can just convince them with this is our best technology and that those planners will accept it? You can't. You have to make sure that you empathize with them and make sure that you understand what their struggles are and where they are feeling threatened. Because if they feel threatened, they will just shut down. So that's not something that you can do. So you might consider, yeah, Tom, but losing jobs and all that stuff, that's always negative, right? So change is difficult when it's negative. Nope. This. I had massive troubles with this. Because, as I said, I was very career-oriented, and then this little man got born, and it shook my world upside down. Like, I wanted to do, I also just became Java champion, so I was like, I'm going to do more for the Java community. I'm going to put more effort into that. And then my son came, and I was like, from one day to the next, I didn't care about Java. And this is really weird to say at the Java conference, but it really warped my identity. And I think that we use the wrong words when we talk about children. You don't get children, you become a parent, which is something much more deeper when we think about change and how it impacts us. So what for me, this thin man actually represents is empathy. We need to have empathy in change, whether that's change we want to impact on others or change that we want to deal with ourselves. And if we do that, it helps a lot to be empathic towards others and ourselves. Take some time back to realize what is it actually that I'm feeling, and is there something I need to do to help deal with this? And also when someone's struggling, you give them some feedback and some help, and you just listen to them. That can really help them change in any way that you want to help them change. So that's the first one, empathy. Now, the second character is the scarecrow. And the scarecrow has a bit of a problem, namely if he wants to be intelligent, his brain is full of stuffing, which is not that good. He wants a brain. He desperately wants a brain. What he actually wants throughout the story is he wants to get smarter. And there's two ways to get smarter and to get more wisdom. The first one is to try things, to just do things. I have a good example of that. So a couple of years ago, I was teaching a university course. And one of the things I hated as a teacher was taking attendance, you know. You come in and it's like, are you here? Yes, raise your hand. I'm marking down. Boring. And I was like, I'm going to use AI. So this was pre-GDPR. This was not illegal. So I pointed a camera at my students when they came in. And I was using Microsoft Cognitive Services, which is a facial recognition API from Azure. And then to bridge those two, because a camera is a stream of images and the API took a single image, I put something in between called OpenCV. Anyone know OpenCV? So it's a very simple, low-level image processing library. Now, OpenCV came with a pre-built machine learning model to detect faces. It came with a pre-existing machine learning model that detected faces. It came with it. I didn't build it. Important for the rest of the story. Because the next day, I worked on it all night long. It worked. I was happy. Next day, I go to the school, I point the camera at the door, and there's one student that did not get recognized. And I was like, OK, interesting. Let's go have a look. What could have possibly gone wrong here, right? And we tried to investigate. It didn't work. In the end, I removed all the other code, and I just fed this image to the machine learning model that came with OpenCV. I hear a few people snickering. You're absolutely right. So the way I got wise about using machine learning models that I found online was through this experience. Now, I apologize to that student. You can already guess what kind of skin color that student had. And he could laugh at it because he knew me. I know I didn't mean bad intent. But this is how you can get wisdom, by failing publicly. But this is not the best way to get wisdom. We can't keep doing this, right? We see this too often in the wild now. People just do stuff with Gen AI, and suddenly they have a database publicly on the internet, and then they cry because it's full of junk. Instead, what's a much better way to learn things is to learn from your elders. Remember that old guy on that senior developer on my first project? He actually said a lot of good things to me that I completely ignored at the time, and then years later I realized, oh damn, he was right. So I want to give you a few examples out of that one. So this was 12-ish years ago, and one of the things I said, I was very hyped, like, oh yeah, this microservice thing, man, it's really booming. Super excited. I just went to DevOps. I saw some cool, I believe it was Sam Newman's talk back then. I went to the guy, and he just said, yeah, I looked at it. We'll make the same mistake as with remote EGBs. And I said, huh? What does he know? Netflix is doing it. Everyone is doing it. But who still remembers remote EGBs? Only a few people. OK. I'm assuming the rest of you might not have ever seen it. I assume some of you have suppressed this memory from your brain somehow. Remote EGBs was the idea that you could have a Java class on two different, a Java class on one machine, the same class on the other machine, and you could just call it, and you didn't have to worry about the network or where it was located. And that is exactly how the first microservices were implemented. We made exactly the same mistake as this senior developer was trying to tell me, but I didn't see it at the time. Now, the lesson you can learn from this, especially when it goes into the context of dealing with change, is a classic quote that history rhymes. It's not always the same, but there's things that will echo through time that will always come back. And I realized I had to think back of this quote because in the code reviews, one of the students asked me, do I still need to learn something? Because I'm doing everything with ChatGPT and these LLMs and these agents. Do I still need to learn something? And I thought, I've heard this question before, right? We've asked this question before. When books came out, when book printing came out, they also said, you don't have to know anything anymore. That was Plato, end of wisdom. Plato, that's a long time ago. When the internet came out, we had a similar thing. We don't have to know anything anymore. That was actually my grandfather. So, short story, my grandfather had a bar. And he hated cell phones and the internet because the way he thought about wisdom was the best way to get wisdom is to sit in a bar. So there was some financial incentive from his side, of course, to sit in a bar and banter with your colleagues or your friends about a topic. And he hated the fact that you can just now pull this thing out of your pocket and find the answer, and it stops any sort of discussion. He realized that getting real wisdom was not in finding the end result, it was in the intermediate discussion and all the things that happened there. Of course, code completion was also the end of wisdom. That's that senior developer, right? He was angry at me because I was using code completion, which now sounds absolutely absurd. But you know what? He had a point. I realized later why he said that. So the reason why he reacted so negatively on my pull request is because I introduced a library for a method that exists in the JDK. And his idea was, if you don't have code completion, then you have to memorize the JDK, and then you wouldn't have made this mistake. So somewhere crooked, he had a point about change, you know? If you don't have code completion, you probably remember more. But there's this trade-off. Now, where is this going to go with LLMs? I think anyone that says exactly how the future is going to play out is guessing, assuming. I really don't know. I don't want to answer this one. What I do see is that there is this thing where people keep yelling at me. Yeah, so we've had these layers and layers of abstraction, and we used to do binary, not really binary, I hope. I hope nobody actually had to write binary. Machine code, assembly, compiled language, and now we have this new abstraction layer in natural language. But there's one big difference, because history rhymes. It's not always exactly the same. This time it's not deterministic. And I heard the counter-argument, yes, Tom, but humans are not deterministic. That's true. If you ask me the same question on Monday morning and Friday evening after a couple of beers, the answer will be definitely different. But we kind of expect that was the deal with computers, right? They were this fast deterministic thing that wouldn't go off the rails. And now, the thing is, these companies that make LLMs, like ChatGPT, like OpenAI, the company, they knew this. Because when the first models came out, they actually always launched a system card. And this is from the system card of GPT-4. And basically, the system card is a list where they state the risks when releasing this model. And it's basically over-reliance is a failure mode, blah, 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 blah. Users are less likely to challenge or verify the model's responses. So they already knew when they launched this thing with GPT-4 that this would become a major thing. This didn't happen, did it? No, nobody made this mistake. There were actually a lot of cases. One of my favorite ones is the Canadian airline, where someone missed a flight, and he convinced the chatbot of the airline to say that it's the airline's fault, and they had to pay him. So he managed to social engineer his way through the chatbot. Now, the weird thing is, it's not weird, it's very logical, but if you can't see if you're talking to an actual person or if it's a chatbot, then legally, as the user, you can claim that it's the company that told you this, and they have to actually do it. So yeah, let's say that we made a few mistakes, and I see this as well. Some developers that, and especially in that student group, because it feels like an easy shortcut, right, to make code this way. But the people that didn't really take the effort to learn what it was generating and relied on it a lot, got stuck way more. And when they got stuck, they didn't get stuck like we used to get stuck before Gen AI. We used to get stuck and we didn't have code because we couldn't figure it out. They get stuck, but they have a million lines of code because they just keep generating. That's different. So that was the first one. And I wish that I just listened to this person, because I would have gotten so much wisdom out of him instead. But I was a bit arrogant at the time. Second example. Oh, have you seen this new JavaScript framework when I was still excited about every JavaScript framework that Sun touched, which was like every week? He said, I don't follow these trends anymore. If it's important, it'll pop up on my radar. And I thought, come on, man, this is the real deal. We need to keep up with everything. This guy's out of the loop. Of course, it took me a burnout to realize that he was absolutely right. You don't have to do everything. And that's also the thing with change. You kind of determine how much change you focus on. You don't have to follow everything in this industry. You really don't. And I know especially younger people, when I see CVs of people, they have 5 or 6 programming languages, like it's a badge of honor. And I'm like, this is a lot of things to follow. Like, you probably know a Hello World, but how much more do you know of these languages? You can determine how much change you focus on, and it doesn't have to be much. You know, I sometimes compare it to being in a bookstore. So I have a subscription on a bookstore in the center. Whenever I enter, every month, their entire collection has almost changed, which is great. But it also gives me a lot of FOMO, because there's a lot of books that I would like to read, but I just physically don't have the time to read them. And I think in tech, we sort of also have this. We're getting overwhelmed with new technologies, and it's sometimes hard to pick what am I actually going to learn and what am I going to sort of ignore. So I have some advice for that, because I also did a teacher's degree. And in that teacher's degree, you learn a lot about learning. And this is one of the most helpful yet simple models that I have used in the past. Basically, if you want to teach people something, you should focus on what they already know, or if you're learning yourself, what you already know. Then there's a small circle outside it of things that they can learn at that point, and then there's a circle outside that of things they can't learn. It's so simple, but so many people sort of don't have this clear and mess it up a little bit. So let me give you an example. If you know basic Java, the circle around it, if you know basic Java, you can probably learn JUnit. You know most of the constructs needed to learn JUnit. But jumping directly from basic Java to wire, mock, and test containers, that's probably a bit too much, because there's concepts from JUnit that you actually need to understand first before you can learn those other frameworks. So you actually need to make sure, whenever you learn something, to take into account what you already know at this point in time, what would you like to learn, and is this in the outer circle, the thing I want to learn, or is this in the more inner circle? Is this something I can learn right now, or do I need to take intermediate steps? Now, this sounds like a simple framework, but if you mess it up, this basically happens. If you stay too much in the middle circle, it's boring. It's boring. You do constantly stay within your safety circle, you'll be bored out. This is actually the sweet spot, like 1 foot in where you're comfortable, like a programming language you like, but a new domain, or vice versa, a domain you like a lot, but a new programming language. And if you do too much out of the outer circle, if you try to learn things that you're just not ready for, you might try and fight, and eventually you might get a burnout. And that's something we see with change as well. If you focus on too much change and try to keep up with everything, that might be the consequence. So what I'm actually telling you to do is be a horse. So do you know why they put blinders on horses? Anyone? Focus. Yeah. Do you know the story of the cart they pull behind them? It's not just focus. So originally, they put blinders on horses because horses were not used to just ride on, but also to pull carts. And because horses have a wide peripheral vision, they might sometimes they might sometimes see the cart behind them and get spooked because, oh, there's something behind me. Oh, there's something behind me. And then they would just bolt off. That's why they originally created these things, to have focus, to have less change. So if I had only listened to that senior developer telling me you don't have to focus on everything, it will be important, if it will pop up if it becomes important enough, I might have avoided a burnout. And I think this is just pretty good advice for anyone. Don't try to do everything all at once, especially when there's a lot of change coming on. The third one, I have one final example from this senior developer. And this is kind of the inverse. I made a pull request and sent in this piece of code. Who thinks this piece of code is difficult? Nobody. Yes, one person. This was his reaction. This is too difficult. Why not use a simple loop? Keep it simple. And I was like, huh? Keep it simple? Huh? What? Like, since almost nobody raised their hands, I think everyone agrees this is already pretty simple code, right? But it really depends. This is 12 years ago. Streams and lambdas had just come out, and he had never seen that syntax before. So for him, simple meant something that he knew. And this is what we see with change as well. New things are just scary. They feel awkward. We're just genetically and biologically programmed when we see something that's not in our brain or a pattern we recognize, that it's kind of like, ugh. It's just in our brains. And I see it as in a very weird context as well, because I play board games a lot. So this is a board game. Does anyone know which one? Wingspan. I think in German it's Flügelschlag or something. I'm not even going to try to pronounce it in different languages. But I was trying to teach this game to my aunties, you can see by their colorful dresses. And they love birds. They love the cards. They hated this game. Because while Wingspan is lauded as one of the best family games, it's actually not that good an introduction game. Because there's a lot of mechanics that if you don't play video games, wow, that's a bias in my head. If you don't play board games that often, there's a lot of things here, mechanics that come at once. So there's a dice tower, which is already something strange to have on the table. You need to draft your resources. You need to draft the cards. There's all these resource placements, eggy things, and cubes. And I thought that this would be a fun game. They love birds, and they were just completely overwhelmed. Just because these are all mechanics that are new. So it's not because we think something is simple or a change for us is easy, that it's as easy for other people as well. Now, from a more technical perspective, I saw this as well the first time I opened the LangChain for J documentation. Because I mentioned before, I have like 12 years experience as a Java developer. I'm a Java champion. And I felt like a total rookie the first time I saw this. This is on the intro page. I recognized almost none of the words. Now, well, of course, memory and output parser. I can imagine something in my head. But the other words were like sort of scary. Like, what do these things mean? Am I somewhat junior again? Do I need to learn all these concepts to know how LangChain works? And I think we see this very often, and maybe you see it not in yourself, but in your team. When you onboard someone in a team and you give them a new code base, even if they know the programming language, even if they know the framework, it's still a new domain to them. And it might take them a while to really grasp what is going on. So introducing them gently with smaller tasks might be better than just dumping them in there and say, you're a senior developer, just go ahead and do things. But does that mean that we should be not adapting to change and not trying new frameworks? No, because that's what the scarecrow kind of does. The scarecrow asks critical questions and he's constantly learning. And basically, for me, the scarecrow is the embodiment of curiosity. He's super curious. He asks all the questions. He wants to get wise, and he does get wise. And actually, in the sequel, he becomes the advisor to the Empress of Oz. So he becomes like a very statusful person. So we should be curious in dealing with change, not just empathic like with the Tin Man. We should always be curious on the change. And especially when you're kind of afraid of the change, once you look deeper into the change, it might turn out that it's not that impactful at all and not that scary, which is kind of what we're discovering with LLMs right now. So the last companion is the cowardly lion. And the cowardly lion basically is constantly afraid. And lions are known to be prideful, courageful animals, but he is not. And as much as I can say about everything here, in the end it comes down to a bit of courage. Because sometimes we get into situations that are pretty scary, or that feel scary to us. And we need to do certain things to keep going on. And there's a couple ways that I think bravery is necessary when changes come, especially in this AI wave. And that's the bravery to express some concerns and thoughts. Because when the AI wave is coming over us and everyone is super hype, as you might have seen during the keynote as well, we should still be able to voice our concerns, because not everything is like just going perfectly. We still need to do some good API designs. We still need to design our software in a good way. We're finally rediscovering that with spec-driven development and all those things. But in the beginning of the wave, it was like, yeah, you don't need to know all these things. Yes, we do. We can replace all humans. No, we can't. We shouldn't. So make sure that we still voice these concerns. And it takes a bit of bravery to go against the stream and say, nah, we're not going to do that. We should especially call out things when we see that it's immoral or just plain wrong. So a while ago, and I'm not going to show any picture of this, I'm just going to say it because I don't want to give these people any more like marketing value. But I saw on LinkedIn a marketing company that had made a commercial, and they had made a commercial using Michael Jackson and all these dead artists basically singing the theme song of their company. And the post on LinkedIn went something like, yeah, we had this video on television, and television banned it, but we were going to post it on LinkedIn anyway, because look at our marketing genius. And I was surprised because a lot of people that I know commented, oh, that's awesome, you're expanding the boundaries of what marketing can be and can do. And I was like, no, this is friggin' unethical. Don't do this kind of stuff. And we should be calling this out. It's not because these AI companies have copyright infringed basically any book writer ever that we should just allow anyone to do it. We shouldn't even be allowing them to do it. And I'm glad to see quite a few lawsuits now being leveraged against these companies, because this is just wrong. And we're still human and we should be held accountable to that. Now, it also takes some bravery to learn some new skills, because becoming a junior again, in whatever capacity, is also kind of scary, right? You know all the things. Maybe you've noticed this if you, for the first time, if you've always used the Spring framework and you move to Quarkus or vice versa, that initial moment when you're trying to do a simple like REST API endpoint and you have to look up how to do it, that feels pretty bad. It feels like you're a junior again in some way. So we need some bravery to learn new skills as well. Now, what are some skills I think are going to be very valuable in this change around AI? Reading. There's actually this great presentation by Marit van Dijk. I saw her at the top-rated speaker list as well, so that's that Marit van Dijk. And she did a talk called Reading Code, where she explains some concepts that make it easier to read code. Because we train people a lot on writing code, we don't train them that much on reading code. And if you see how we're interacting with code these days, learning how to read code better is a very valuable skill to have. So that's one. The other thing is I see quite some people asking agents to do big refactorings. But we have a tool for that. It's called Open Rewrite, where you can just give it a recipe, and where people have made deterministic recipes, and you just run the recipe and it upgrades your Spring version. It can even upgrade from an old framework to a fork you made, like we did with Timefall, by the way. So this is deterministic stuff. We should not just be using LLMs for the sake of it if there's better alternatives that are deterministic. And maybe the scariest part is we should learn how to work with these LLMs and interact with them and get the most value out of them. If not just to see what they can do, to definitely see what they can't do. Because if you're afraid that LLMs might take your job, then it's very valuable to know what these things can't do. Because then that's where we can still add a lot of value. And then finally, you need to have some bravery to take action. And there's a few colleagues in the front row, but they're colleagues now, but they didn't used to be a year ago. So I have been a fan of Timefold/OptaPlanner, so that's the previous name of it, for many years. And I was also a consultant for 12 years at a different company. And that was my first company. That's the company that sent me to the Netherlands, right? And at some point, the people from Timefold approached me and said, "Hey, Tom, do you want to join our company?" And we had some discussions, and they basically offered me what I considered my dream job. They offered me everything I could have ever wanted. Can you guess what I said? Can you guess my answer to them? No. Yeah, I said no. Like an idiot. I said no in the beginning. Because I was just too afraid to make the leap. And that's stupid. Sometimes you just need to take a leap of faith and see where we end up. Now, it's weird because despite saying no initially, I had done everything I thought I had to do. I had created an Excel list comparing my then current job to the offer of Timefold on like 12 different categories. Everything said I should join Timefold, and somehow I didn't. I said no because I was just too afraid. And I must say that I talked to my wife. I even went to a career coach and a psychologist, like, why the hell did I say no? Because initially that no felt good. I said no to Timefold, so I said yes to my current company so I could stay in the status quo. I didn't have to change. I could keep my old little job that I'm comfortable with. But while that initial answer felt good, I started getting pretty depressed after like 2-3 weeks. Like, this was like an amazing opportunity, and I said no. What do? Eventually, I called the CEO and said, "I'm sorry. Do you still have the job?" And luckily, he said yes. And now yesterday was my 1-year anniversary, so I'm very happy that I made that jump. But that's scary to make a jump sometimes, and I can really recommend finding help. And I know there's some taboo here when you're scared or when you're not feeling brave for a moment to go to a psychologist or to go to a career coach or to ask for help. But I think when change is difficult, and that's any kind of change, even when I became a parent, I asked for a lot of advice because I was sort of afraid. Ask help. We don't have to do this by ourselves. And there's plenty of people that are willing to help you out if you just ask. But that's somewhat of a brave step to take. So that was actually the third pillar, bravery. Because bravery is facing forward when afraid or resistant. Now, those were the 3 companions. Because when talking about dealing with change, I think these are really the three things that we need. Empathy for ourselves and for others, because if change is enacted on us, it's important to take a step back and feel like, how am I feeling about this change? Is this change comfortable? Why don't I like this change? And also, if you see it in your teams, approaching people with some empathy when they say, oh, but I used to code and now I just use an agent and I don't feel the same way anymore. It's important to have that conversation because in the end, we're still humans. And if you want to convince them of something, showing some empathy is going to be necessary to enact any kind of change with yourself or with others. Also some curiosity, and I think you're curious people, else you wouldn't be at DevOps. Because DevOps is really a nice place to be curious and to have a good look around. But we need that curiosity, especially when we're afraid of doing something or when a big change comes. What does this change mean? How do I deal with this change? What new skills do I need to learn? And finally, a bit of bravery, because sometimes you just need to make the jump. Now, the cool thing is, in the story, these three companions, they're not perfect, and even in the sequels, because there's like 15 books on The Wizard of Oz, which I've read because of reasons. In the story, these companions sometimes fail. Fail in the sense, the lion sometimes becomes cowardly again. The scarecrow just thinks he's a dumb person. But what's really great is that these companions support each other. And that's the same with empathy, curiosity, and bravery. When bravery kind of falters, when you're not brave enough to do something, but you are empathic, thinking about how you feel about the change, and you're curious enough to inspect, why am I afraid of this? Then you actually become just a tad more brave. And vice versa. If you're not empathic, or if you're empathy, you don't have enough room for empathy, but if you're curious about people, you will learn a lot about them. And because you learn a lot about people, you will become more empathic towards them. I remember when the Ukraine war broke out, honestly, it was a bit far away from home. I didn't have a lot of, well, I had empathy on a human level, but I didn't know anyone. But empathy really kicked in for me once I started to talk to some people from the Ukraine. That's where the curiosity came in, and that improved my empathy in life in general. So I think that when dealing with any kind of change, these are the three pillars that you should have. So I have a talk recommendation that actually continues a bit on that. So if you're specifically afraid of AI taking your job, Maarten, an ex-colleague of mine, actually has a good talk about that uses curiosity, bravery, and empathy to explain you why he's not afraid. So kind of his journey. And I think that's going to be an interesting talk for you. So we're reaching the end of my presentation. So I want to leave you with some final words. So to the young people, somewhat young people, don't ignore like your seniors. I know that they will sometimes say things that you think like, you're out of the loop, or remote EGBs, sure, whatever. But if you learn something from my story, that senior developer had a lot of wisdom, and I decided to disregard him. And it took me a lot of time to realize that he was actually full of wisdom, and I could have used that. Vice versa, he grew up in a world without code completion, and it would have helped if I had been a bit more empathic and coached him towards using these new tools as well. So that's for the junior people. For the older people that still have great hairlines, because I don't think I will have these hairlines when I get old. Kind of the same. Be nice to your juniors, help them out, share your wisdom, even if they don't want to listen because they label you an old person. Because it's important to share our wisdom with the next generation, because it's going to be a weird time. And if we can help them in any kind of way to succeed, we sort of have to. Because those damn kids with their damn LLMs, they will be our future. All right, thank you. So I have stickers for the BJUG. If you could rate my talk, that would be great, because I want to give this talk more. And if I can improve it in any way, I would love to hear it. And if you have any questions, I need to evacuate the room in a couple of minutes. But if you see me around, I'm around for the rest of the conference, and I would love to talk more about this. Thank you.